Marco De Luca slammed both hands onto the hospital counter so hard that the sound echoed through the emergency ward. "Where is my son?" he roared. Doctors froze. Nurses exchanged frightened glances. The security guards standing near the entrance looked at one another but didn't dare move. Everyone in the hospital knew exactly who he was: Marco De Luca, the most feared mafia boss in northern Italy. His expensive black suit couldn't hide the colorful tattoos covering his neck and hands. Beneath the tailored fabric, his entire body was inked from his shoulders to his ankles, a living record of a violent life that had made powerful men tremble at the sound of his name. Nobody wanted to be the one who gave him bad news. "I asked a question," Marco shouted again. A trembling doctor stepped forward. "Mr. De Luca, your son is having difficulty breathing." "Our team is doing everything we can." Marco grabbed the doctor's collar. "If anything happens to Matteo—" He stopped. He couldn't finish the sentence. The little boy inside that emergency room wasn't just his son. He was the only family Marco had left. Then, just as another nurse rushed past carrying emergency equipment, a loud female voice cut through the panic. "Move!" Everyone turned. A very large woman in a plain housekeeping uniform pushed a medical cart through the hallway without waiting for permission. Her cheeks were flushed from running. Her dark brown hair had escaped from its bun. She looked nothing like the polished medical staff around her. "Who let her in here?" one nurse whispered. Another frowned. "She's just one of the cleaners." The woman ignored every stare. She kept running toward the emergency room. Marco narrowed his eyes. "What is she doing?" Before anyone answered, the emergency room doors slammed shut behind her. Marco took one furious step forward. "Stop her!" The hallway erupted into chaos. And that was exactly how everything changed. 3 weeks earlier. If stories about redemption, impossible odds, and unexpected heroes inspire you, make sure you subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone who believes first impressions aren't always the truth. Now let's go back to where it all began. The wrought iron gates of Villa De Luca slowly opened. A small taxi rolled inside. The driver looked through the windshield and whistled. "Madonna mia. I've never seen a place this big." The passenger smiled politely. "It is beautiful." When the taxi stopped, the driver hurried around to help unload 2 worn suitcases. "You sure this is the right address, Signora?" She nodded. "Yes. You work here?" "I hope so." He scratched his head. "I've heard stories about this family." She smiled again. "So have I." The driver hesitated. "You be careful." "I always am." She paid him, thanked him, and lifted one suitcase in each hand. Her name was Isabella Romano. She was 36 years old. She was born in Florence before moving to Milan after getting married. Life had changed dramatically since then. She was a single mother, a proud Italian woman, very plus-size, soft-faced, warm-hearted, the kind of woman children trusted almost immediately. Years of working 2 jobs while raising her little daughter alone had left her with tired eyes, but they had never taken away her kindness. She stopped for a second and looked toward the massive mansion. "I can do this," she whispered to herself. For Sophia, her 8-year-old daughter, was waiting at Isabella's sister's apartment across the city. Sophia thought her mother had finally found a stable job. She had no idea where. Isabella wanted to keep it that way. Children shouldn't carry adult worries. The front door opened before Isabella reached the steps. A sharply dressed woman in her 50s walked outside without smiling. "You are late." Isabella glanced at her watch. "I arrived 5 minutes early." The woman looked annoyed. "I said you're late because I have already been waiting." There wasn't even a greeting. "My name is Bianca Conti." "The estate manager?" Bianca nodded. "And you are Isabella Romano?" "Yes." Bianca slowly looked Isabella up and down. She didn't even try to hide the judgment in her eyes. "You don't exactly match the image we requested." Isabella understood immediately. She had heard comments like that most of her life. Instead of reacting, she simply asked, "Would you still like me to work?" Bianca folded her arms. "That depends." "On my work?" "No," she paused. "On whether Mr. De Luca likes you." Inside the mansion, several employees pretended to work while secretly staring. One maid whispered to another, "She's enormous." Another covered her mouth to hide a laugh. "She won't last a week." Isabella heard every word. She simply kept walking. Bianca noticed. "You aren't going to defend yourself. I came here to clean, not argue." For the first time, Bianca looked slightly surprised. She led Isabella through endless hallways, decorated with priceless paintings and marble floors. These rooms are cleaned every morning. I understand. The kitchen is inspected twice a day. Of course, the boss hates mistakes. I'll do my best. Bianca stopped walking. No, she looked Isabella directly in the eyes. Your best won't be enough. Without another word, she continued walking. A few minutes later, they entered the main kitchen. The staff immediately fell silent. An older cook approached Isabella first. My name is Carlo, he offered his hand. Welcome, she smiled warmly. Thank you, Bianca looked annoyed by the friendly exchange. The introductions are over. She pointed toward a long list taped to the wall. Your duties begin immediately, just then. The entire room became quiet again. Footsteps echoed through the hallway. Heavy, confident, deliberate. Every employee straightened instantly. Marco De Luca entered without saying a word. He was taller than most men in the room. The tattoos climbing from beneath his shirt collar to his jawline made him impossible to ignore. His cold gray eyes swept across the staff. When they reached Isabella, they stopped. Silence stretched between them. Marco looked at Bianca. This is the new housekeeper? Yes, sir. He looked Isabella up and down once. No smile. No handshake, nothing. Finally he spoke. You've worked in estates before? Yes. You have references? Several. He didn't ask to see them. Instead he said quietly, people usually tell you everything about themselves on the first day. Isabella waited. I don't. Marco took one slow step closer. I don't care where you came from. I don't care about your excuses. And I don't tolerate incompetence. She met his eyes calmly. I wasn't planning to offer excuses. For the first time, Marco looked mildly intrigued. Then his expression hardened again. My son comes first. If anything in this house affects him, he let the warning hang in the air. You leave. I understand. He turned to walk away, then stopped without looking back. What is your daughter's name? Isabella blinked. Sophia. I read your file. You'll be paid enough to take care of her. His voice became colder. Don't ever mistake my generosity for friendship. Without another word, he disappeared down the hallway. The room exhaled all at once. Carlo muttered under his breath, Congratulations. Isabella frowned. For what? You survived your first conversation with Marco De Luca. She looked toward the hallway where he had vanished. Something about him didn't make sense. Behind all the intimidation, behind the tattoos, behind the icy voice. She had seen something else for just a fraction of a second. Fear. Not fear for himself, fear of losing someone he loved. She didn't know it yet. But before those 3 weeks were over, that fear would bring both of their worlds crashing together. The first week passed without a single complaint from Isabella. She arrived before sunrise every morning. She left long after sunset. Every room she cleaned looked untouched. Every task was completed on time, and every member of the kitchen staff quietly admitted she worked harder than anyone else in the mansion. Still, Bianca refused to acknowledge it. If you finish the West Wing, Bianca said one morning, then you're already behind on the East Wing. I'll start right away, Isabella replied. And don't answer every instruction with a smile. I'm sorry. There you go again. Isabella simply nodded and picked up her supplies. Carlo watched the exchange from the kitchen doorway. You know, he muttered as she passed, one day that woman's face is going to crack if she keeps frowning. Isabella laughed softly. I hope not. That sounds painful, Carlo chuckled. You really don't let people get under your skin, do you? I've learned that peace is worth more than winning arguments. Carlo shook his head. I wish I'd learned that 40 years ago. As Isabella continued down the hallway, she heard the unmistakable sound of coughing. Not ordinary coughing. Short, tight, repeated. She stopped. The sound was coming from the library. She knocked gently before opening the door. A little girl sat curled up on a window seat with a sketchbook resting on her knees. She couldn't have been older than 8. Dark hair framed her pale face, and every few seconds another cough interrupted her breathing. You must be Matteo's, Isabella began before catching herself. No, the girl smiled weakly. I'm Lily, Isabella frowned. I'm sorry, the little girl giggled. Everyone expects a boy because of my father's reputation. Isabella smiled. I suppose I made the same mistake. I'm Lily De Luca. I'm Isabella. I know, you do. The staff talks about everyone. Isabella laughed. I'm afraid to ask what they said about me. Lily tilted her head. They said you wouldn't last. And what do you think? I think they're wrong. That answer caught Isabella by surprise. Why? Because everyone else tries to impress my father. You don't. Before Isabella could answer, Lily started coughing again. This time the fit lasted longer. Isabella immediately noticed the slight wheeze between breaths. You should use your inhaler. Lily looked down. I don't have it. You forgot it. No, I couldn't find it. When was the last time you used it? I'm not sure. Did you tell someone? I told Miss Bianca. What did she say? She said she'd replace it. When? Lily shrugged. A few days ago. A quiet alarm settled inside Isabella. She didn't show it. Instead, she smiled warmly. Would you like some water? Yes, please. A few minutes later, Isabella returned with water. Lily was still drawing. What are you making? My mom. Isabella looked carefully. The drawing showed a smiling woman holding Lily's hand in a field of sunflowers. She's beautiful. I don't remember her voice anymore. The words hit Isabella like a punch. I'm afraid one day I'll forget her face, too. Without thinking, Isabella sat beside her. You won't. How do you know? Because love remembers things our minds sometimes can't. Lily looked at her quietly. My dad says crying doesn't solve problems. What do you think? I think I miss my mom. So crying is allowed. The little girl smiled through watery eyes for the first time in a long time. Someone wasn't trying to distract her from her grief. Someone was simply willing to sit with it. Later that afternoon, Marco returned from a meeting earlier than expected. He walked through the hallway while speaking into his phone. No, I said the shipment moves tomorrow. I don't care what Russo thinks. If he has a problem, he talks to me. He ended the call before anyone else could hear another word. As he approached the library, he stopped. Laughter, his daughter's laughter. He hadn't heard that sound in weeks. Quietly, he looked through the half-open door. Lily and Isabella sat on the floor surrounded by colored pencils. What is this supposed to be? Isabella asked. It's a cat. It has 6 legs. It's a special cat. It also has wings. It flies. Isabella pretended to think very seriously. I've clearly underestimated Italian cats. Lily burst into laughter. Marco remained frozen outside the room. Something inside him tightened. He remembered another laugh, his wife's. For just a moment the mansion sounded alive again. Then Bianca appeared behind him. Mr. De Luca, Marco turned. What? I don't think it's appropriate. What isn't? The new housekeeper. What about her? She's becoming too familiar with Miss Lily. Marco looked back toward the library. His daughter was smiling, actually smiling. Is Lily unhappy? No. Has Isabella neglected her duties? No. Then what's your concern? Bianca hesitated. I simply think staff should remember their place. Marco stared at her for a moment, then he walked away without another word. Bianca clenched her jaw. She wasn't used to being ignored. That evening, Isabella finished polishing the dining room. She checked her phone. 5 missed calls, all from her sister. Her heart skipped. She immediately called back. Lucia, Issa, what happened? Sophia had a fever. Is she okay? She's sleeping now. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I didn't want you losing your new job. Isabella closed her eyes. I'll come after work. No, you've barely started there. I'll stay with her tonight. Promise, I promise. After ending the call, Isabella quietly wiped away a tear. She hated missing moments with her daughter. Every hour she spent inside this mansion was another hour away from Sophia. But she needed this job. Without it, there would be no rent, no school. No medicine, no future. She took a deep breath. For you, Tesoro, she whispered. For everything. She didn't realize someone had heard her. Marco stood at the far end of the hallway. He hadn't intended to listen. He simply happened to walk past. He watched Isabella slip her phone into her pocket before returning to work as though nothing had happened. Most people asked him for advances, bonuses, special treatment. She asked for nothing, not even sympathy. That was unusual. The next morning, the mansion buzzed with activity. An important charity gala was only days away. Politicians, business executives, foreign investors, everyone would attend. Bianca barked orders from room to room. No fingerprints on the glass. The silverware must shine. Every flower arrangement must match. She turned toward Isabella. And stay out of sight during the event. I'm working in the kitchen. Good. I don't want guests getting the wrong impression. Several maids exchanged uncomfortable looks. Isabella simply answered, I understand. But Carlo didn't stay quiet. The wrong impression of what? Bianca glared at him. Mind your business. No, he stepped closer. I've worked here 22 years. I've seen lazy workers. I've seen thieves. I've seen liars, he pointed toward Isabella. She's none of those things. Bianca's face darkened. Careful, Carlo. No, you be careful. Before the argument could continue, Marco entered. What is going on? Silence. Bianca answered first. Nothing, sir. Marco looked from Bianca to Carlo, then to Isabella. He knew someone was lying. He simply couldn't tell who. His phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen. Unknown number, he answered. Speak, the voice on the other end was calm. You've become difficult to reach, Marco. His eyes narrowed instantly. Who is this? A man who's going to teach you what it feels like to lose the only thing that matters. The line went dead. Marco stood perfectly still. Then he slowly looked toward the staircase. Toward the second floor, toward the room where Lily slept, for the first time in years. The great Marco de Luca looked genuinely afraid, and someone else in the mansion had just noticed it. Marco lowered the phone slowly, but the cold look on his face had changed. Anyone who knew him well would have recognized it immediately. This wasn't anger, it was calculation. Someone had crossed a line. He looked at one of the men standing near the entrance. Enzo, a heavily built man in a dark suit, stepped forward. Boss, lock the gates. They're already locked. I said lock them again. Yes, boss, no one enters, no one leaves. Until I know who made that call, the staff immediately became uneasy. Bianca looked around nervously. Mr. De Luca, surely this is unnecessary. Marco slowly turned toward her. Do I look like a man who enjoys repeating himself? Bianca lowered her eyes. No, good. Within seconds, security personnel spread across the estate. Electronic gates closed. Additional cameras were activated. Even the family dogs were released into the outer gardens. Isabella quietly continued polishing the dining room windows. She had learned something years ago, when powerful people panicked. The wisest person in the room usually stayed calm. Carlo walked beside her. You don't seem surprised. I don't know enough to be surprised. He lowered his voice. This family has enemies. I imagine that. More than you can count. I don't judge people by rumors. Carlo looked at her with curiosity. You really don't, do you? No, she smiled. Rumors never tucked my daughter into bed. Carlo laughed. I've never met anyone quite like you. Before Isabella could answer, hurried footsteps echoed through the hallway. It was Lily. She looked frightened. Have you seen Daddy? I think he's in his office, Isabella replied gently. Lily hesitated. Can you come with me? Of course. They walked together toward the second floor. Halfway up the staircase, Lily whispered, Something's wrong. What makes you think that? My father only calls extra security when people are in danger. Has this happened before? Lily nodded. When Mama was alive. Isabella's heart tightened. You remember that? I remember hiding under my bed. She looked down at her shoes. I don't like when Daddy gets that look. What look? The one where he pretends he isn't scared. Isabella didn't know what to say. Children often understood far more than adults realized. They reached Marco's office. Lily knocked softly. Daddy, come in. Marco looked up from a table covered with maps, security photos, and several cell phones. The hard expression on his face softened immediately. Lily, she walked over. Are we in trouble? No. You promised you wouldn't lie to me. Marco sighed. We're being careful. That's different. She crossed her arms. You always say that when you're worried. For a brief moment. The feared Mafia boss looked less like a criminal leader, and more like a father caught between protecting his child and telling her the truth. He knelt in front of her. Listen to me. I'm listening. I need you to stay inside the house for a few days. No garden, no horse riding, no school. I've already arranged private lessons here. Lily frowned. I hate when this happens. Marco placed a hand gently on her shoulder. I know. I just need you safe. She hugged him without another word. Marco closed his eyes. He held her a little tighter than usual. When Lily left the office with Isabella, Marco spoke without looking up. Wait. Isabella stopped. Yes, if Lily asks questions, I won't discuss your business. Good. A brief silence followed. Then Isabella quietly said, I wasn't going to. Marco finally looked at her. Because you're afraid of me. No. Then why? Because children deserve childhood. They shouldn't carry burdens that belong to adults. Marco stared at her for several seconds. No one usually spoke to him like that. especially not an employee, instead of feeling insulted. He found himself thinking about her words long after she walked away. That afternoon, Isabella found Lily sitting alone again. She was coloring quietly. "You look serious. I've been thinking." "About what?" "If something happens to Daddy," Isabella immediately interrupted. "Nothing has happened." "But what if it does?" she hesitated. "My mom left. What if Daddy leaves too?" Isabella sat beside her. "Can I tell you something?" Lily nodded. "When Sophia was born." "Who's Sophia?" "My daughter." "Oh, I thought I had to be strong every single day. Weren't you?" "Not always." "What happened?" "I cried. A lot." Lily looked surprised. "Oh yes. Sometimes I cried after Sophia fell asleep because I didn't want her to worry." "Were you scared?" "Every day." "So what did you do?" "I got up the next morning anyway." Lily smiled. "So being brave means you're scared?" "Exactly. The bravest people are usually the ones who are afraid." Lily thought about that. "I think Daddy's brave." "I think so too." Unknown to either of them, Marco had stopped outside the open door. He heard every word, for reasons he couldn't explain. It comforted him. Later that evening, Isabella prepared to leave for the day. Before reaching the front gate, Enzo approached. "The boss wants a word." She turned around. "In his office?" "No, the garage." She looked confused. "The garage," Enzo nodded. "He said come alone." Several expensive cars filled the underground garage. In the center stood a black armored SUV. Marco leaned against it with his arms folded. "You wanted to see me?" "I did. You've worked here 10 days. Yes, I've had people watching you." Isabella blinked. "I assumed so. You don't seem offended. I work for a man who trusts very few people." "I expected it." Marco watched her carefully. "Do you know what they found?" "What? You leave every evening." "Yes, you don't go shopping. No, you don't meet friends. No, you go straight to a small apartment across the city." "My sisters, you spend several hours there." "My daughter lives there while I work." "You read to her." "Yes, you cook." "Yes, you help with homework." "Yes, you leave after she's asleep." "Usually." Marco remained silent. Finally he asked, "Why?" Isabella looked puzzled. "Because she's my daughter. You could hire help now." "I don't want help. I want time." Marco's eyes narrowed slightly. "Most people in your position would spend the extra money on themselves." She smiled faintly. "I'm not most people." "No, I've noticed." He reached into his jacket and removed an envelope. "This is for you." She looked inside, several thousand euros. Her eyes widened. "I can't accept this. It's a bonus. I haven't earned it. I decide that." She gently closed the envelope and handed it back. "My contract says I'll be paid at the end of the month." "It does." "Then that's enough." Marco didn't take the envelope immediately. "You really are refusing money?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because if I accept something I didn't earn," she smiled kindly, "one day I'll start believing I'm entitled to it, for the first time in years." Marco de Luca found himself speechless. No fear, no greed, no manipulation, just quiet dignity. As Isabella walked away, Enzo stepped out from the shadows. "Boss," Marco kept watching her disappear through the gate. "Find out who she really is." "We already did." "No," he shook his head slowly. "I don't mean what's written on paper. I mean who she is." Enzo frowned. "You think she's hiding something?" Marco's eyes remained fixed on the gate. "I think everyone hides something." What Marco didn't know was that Isabella did have a secret she had buried years ago. A secret that would soon become the only reason his daughter's heart would keep beating. And before another week had passed, that secret would be forced into the light. The following morning began more quietly than anyone expected. After the threatening phone call, Marco had doubled the security around the estate. Armed men patrolled the grounds. Every vehicle entering the property was searched. Every visitor was questioned. Yet the mansion itself felt strangely peaceful. Isabella was arranging fresh towels in the upstairs guest rooms when she heard laughter drifting down the hallway. She smiled before she even reached the door. Lily sat cross-legged on the floor with a cookbook spread open between her and Carlo. "I still think chocolate belongs in pancakes," Lily insisted. Carlo threw up his hands dramatically. "Signorina, your taste buds are committing crimes against Italian cuisine. They're delicious. They're illegal. They're not. They should be." Lily burst into laughter. Isabella stepped inside. "What are the two of you arguing about?" Carlo pointed accusingly at Lily. Settle this, she wants chocolate pancakes. Isabella pretended to think. Lily grinned. You're on my side, right? I think. Isabella paused just long enough to build suspense. We should make half with chocolate and half the traditional way, Carlo groaned. You've just taught her how to negotiate. Lily clapped happily. See, everybody wins. At that exact moment, Marco walked past the doorway. He stopped again. His daughter wasn't just smiling. She was glowing. The dark circles under her eyes seemed lighter. The sadness she had carried since losing her mother had softened, if only for a while. He watched silently. Lily noticed him first. Daddy, she jumped to her feet. You have to help us. Marco raised an eyebrow. With what? Carlo thinks chocolate pancakes are a crime. Marco looked at Carlo. They are. Carlo folded his arms triumphantly. Thank you, boss. Lily looked horrified. You too. Marco's serious expression lasted only a second before the corner of his mouth lifted. Maybe. Once, Lily gasped. That means I win. She hugged him without warning. Marco froze. Physical affection had become rare after his wife's death. Slowly, he wrapped an arm around his daughter. You've become very convincing. I learned from Isabella. Marco glanced toward Isabella. She quickly looked away and returned to folding towels. He couldn't explain why, but every time she was around, Lily seemed lighter. That should have made him grateful. Instead, it made him cautious. People didn't usually give without expecting something in return. That afternoon, Marco was reviewing documents in his study when Enzo entered. You asked me to look deeper into Isabella. Marco didn't lift his eyes from the paperwork. And everything checks out. No debts, no criminal record, no gambling, no suspicious bank transfers, no unusual phone calls. Marco remained silent. Enzo continued. She's raising her daughter alone. Her husband died 6 years ago in a construction accident. Marco finally looked up. What about before that? She worked several different jobs. What kind? Restaurant, cleaning, home care. Marco leaned back. That's all. Enzo hesitated. There is one gap. How long? About 3 years. What was she doing? We can't find anything. Marco's eyes narrowed. Everyone leaves a trail. She didn't. Find it. Enzo nodded. I already have someone working on it. After Enzo left, Marco stood at the window overlooking the gardens. He wasn't convinced, not because he believed Isabella was dangerous, because he had spent his entire adult life learning one lesson. Nobody was exactly who they appeared to be, including himself. Late that evening, Isabella received a phone call while cleaning the upstairs hallway. Her face lit up. Ciao, Sophia. Mama, the little girl's excited voice echoed through the phone. When are you coming? As soon as I finish. I got a gold star today. You did? Yes, for reading. I'm so proud of you. You'll come tonight, I promise. You always keep your promises. I try. There was a short pause. Mama, yes. When will we live together again? The question broke Isabella's heart. Soon. You said that last month. I know. I just miss you. I miss you more than you know. You won't stay at that big house forever. No, I'm only there to build us a better future. I don't care about a big future. I just want you. Isabella closed her eyes, struggling to steady her voice. And you'll have me? I promise. After ending the call, she remained still for several seconds. She didn't realize Marco had walked into the hallway moments earlier. He hadn't intended to overhear. Again, but fate seemed determined to place him within earshot whenever Isabella let down her guard. You miss your daughter. His voice startled her. She quickly slipped her phone into her pocket. I do. Then why not bring her here? She looked surprised. This isn't my home. It could be. I don't think your employees would appreciate that. I didn't ask them. She smiled politely. It's kind of you to offer, but Sophia belongs in a normal home, not a mansion guarded by armed men. Marco couldn't argue with that. She was right. After a brief silence, he asked, Does she know who I am? No. What did you tell her? That I work for a businessman. Marco almost laughed. That's technically true. Technically. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Marco asked quietly, Do you ever regret your life? Isabella looked thoughtful. I regret moments, not people. What does that mean? I regret not having more time with my husband. I regret the nights I worried so much that Sophia saw me crying. I regret every birthday I had to celebrate with less than I wanted to give. She looked directly at him. But I don't regret loving the people I loved. Marco absorbed her words in silence. I've learned something, Isabella continued. What? Money can solve many problems, but it can't hug your child. It can't attend a school play. It can't tell someone you love them. Marco's expression became unreadable. Without another word, he walked away, but her words followed him down the hallway. 2 days later, preparations for the charity gala reached their peak. Luxury cars arrived carrying flowers, decorations, and expensive wines. The mansion buzzed with activity. Bianca marched through every room, criticizing nearly everyone she encountered. She stopped when she saw Isabella helping Lily carry a box of decorations. "What are you doing?" "Lily asked me to help." Bianca took the box from Lily. "Miss Lily doesn't need help from the staff." Lily frowned. "I asked her." Bianca forced a smile. "Your father has important guests coming. You should stay out of the way." Lily looked at Isabella. "I wanted her to help me decorate." Bianca's voice hardened. "Go to your room." Lily's eyes filled with disappointment. She quietly walked away. The moment she disappeared upstairs, Isabella spoke. "There was no need to speak to her like that." Bianca turned sharply. "Excuse me, she's just a child. You don't tell me how to do my job, and you don't tell me how to do mine." "I wasn't trying to." Bianca stepped closer. "Listen carefully. I've worked for the Luca family for nearly 20 years. I know exactly what belongs in this house." Her eyes swept over Isabella. "And what doesn't?" Isabella remained calm. "If you have concerns about my work, I'll gladly listen." "My work isn't what concerns me." Bianca's smile was thin. "I know women like you. You see a lonely billionaire. You see a grieving little girl, and you think you found your chance." Isabella stared at her in disbelief. "You think I came here for money? I think everyone wants something. I already have everything I want." Bianca laughed mockingly. "Really? Then why are you still here?" Isabella answered without raising her voice. "Because I made a commitment, and because Lily deserves kindness whether anyone notices or not." Bianca scoffed. "We'll see how long that act lasts." Neither woman noticed someone standing just beyond the corner of the hallway. Marco had heard every word, especially Bianca's accusation. He looked at Isabella expecting anger. Instead, she simply picked up the decoration box from the floor. "I have work to finish." She walked away without another word. Marco watched her disappear. For the first time, a question entered his mind that he couldn't ignore. What if Bianca had been wrong about Isabella? And what if he had been wrong from the very beginning? Neither of them knew that before the charity gala was over, a carefully planned attack would force Marco to choose between his lifelong instincts and the woman he still wasn't sure he could trust. The morning of the charity gala arrived under a sky so dark that even the veteran gardeners exchanged uneasy glances. Thunder rumbled in the distance. "It's going to be a bad storm," Carlo muttered as he carried trays into the kitchen. One of the younger cooks shrugged. "The weather report said the rain wouldn't arrive until tonight." Carlo looked out the window again. "The weather doesn't always tell the truth." Across the mansion, Bianca was already barking orders. "I want every glass polished again. The flowers in the ballroom are uneven, and who approved those candles? Replace them." She spotted Isabella walking through the corridor with fresh linens. "There you are. You still have the guest suites. I'll finish them before noon. You'd better." Bianca lowered her voice. "And remember what I told you. Stay invisible tonight." Isabella met her eyes calmly. "My job is to keep the house running. That's exactly what you'll do." Without another word, Isabella continued upstairs. She refused to let Bianca's constant insults steal her peace. She had spent years learning that some people only felt powerful when they made someone else feel small. She wasn't going to give Bianca that satisfaction. By early afternoon, luxury cars began arriving. Politicians, business leaders, foreign investors, even a famous football club owner stepped through the front doors. Marco greeted each guest with the same composed expression. His tailored black tuxedo barely concealed the colorful tattoos climbing over his neck and hands. Every movement radiated quiet authority. But inside, he wasn't focused on the gala. He kept replaying the anonymous phone call. "I'm going to teach you what it feels like to lose the only thing that matters." Those words refused to leave his mind. Enzo approached discreetly. "Boss, what?" "We've checked every guest, and no immediate threats." Marco nodded once. "Double the security around Lily. It's already done. Do it again." Enzo smiled faintly. "You're becoming paranoid." Marco looked directly at him. No, I'm becoming careful. Upstairs, Lily stood in front of her bedroom mirror wearing a pale blue dress. She smiled as Isabella adjusted the ribbon in her hair. Do I look okay? You look beautiful. You always say that, because it's always true. Lily turned around. Will Daddy actually spend time with me tonight? I think he'll try. He always gets busy. He loves you. I know, but sometimes I wish he loved meetings a little less. Isabella smiled sadly. I think your father is still learning. Learning what? That children remember time more than gifts, Lily thought quietly. I'll remind him. I'm sure you will, she hugged Isabella tightly. You smell like cookies. I helped Carlo bake dessert. I knew it. The two laughed together. Marco happened to walk past the open bedroom door. He paused. Again, it was becoming a habit. He watched Lily smiling with genuine happiness. He couldn't remember the last time she'd looked so carefree. Without knocking, he stepped inside. Lily, she turned excitedly. Daddy, you look, he searched for the right word, just like your mother. Lily's smile faded into softer emotion. Really? Marco nodded. The first gala we attended together. He stopped himself. Some memories still hurt too much. Lily reached for his hand. Will you save me one dance tonight? Marco looked surprised. You want to dance with an old man? She laughed. You're not old. I'll think about it. No, she grinned. You have to promise. Marco finally smiled. I promise. Watching from across the room, Isabella quietly slipped toward the door. She didn't want to interrupt. Just before she left, Marco spoke. Isabella, she stopped. Yes, thank you. She looked genuinely confused. For what? For, he glanced at Lily, helping her smile again. Isabella answered softly. She already knew how. She just needed someone to smile with. Marco didn't respond, but those words stayed with him. The gala began just after sunset. Crystal chandeliers illuminated the ballroom. Live musicians played softly. Servers moved elegantly through the crowd. The mansion looked perfect, too perfect. Marco hated perfect nights. They usually ended badly. While greeting another guest, he quietly asked Enzo, "Where's Lily?" "In the family lounge with Isabella." "Good, keep them there." Inside the lounge, Lily was growing restless. "I don't want to stay hidden." "It's only for a little while," Isabella said. "But everyone else is having fun." "I know." A flash of lightning illuminated the room. Seconds later, thunder shook the windows. The lights flickered once, then stabilized. Lily looked toward the storm. "I don't like this." Neither did Isabella. Something felt wrong, not because of the weather, because the mansion had suddenly become too quiet. She looked toward the hallway. "Stay here for 1 minute." "Where are you going?" "I just want to check something." "I'll be right back." Lily nodded reluctantly. As Isabella stepped into the corridor, she noticed one of the security cameras hanging strangely. It had been turned away from the hallway. Her heart skipped. That wasn't an accident. She continued walking. Another camera, offline, then another. Someone had disabled them at that exact moment. The mansion went completely dark. Gasps echoed from the ballroom. Someone screamed. Emergency lights failed to activate. What happened? Get the generator. Stay calm. Voices overlapped from every direction. Isabella immediately turned and ran. Lily, she reached the lounge. Empty, her blood ran cold. Lily, no answer. The window curtains fluttered violently. One window stood partially open. Footprints marked the rain-soaked balcony. Isabella's breathing quickened. No, she ran into the hallway. Enzo, he appeared from the darkness. What is it? Lily's gone, his face drained of color. What? She was here. Now she's gone. Enzo grabbed his radio. Lock every exit. No one leaves the estate. Static, nothing else. The radios are dead, he muttered. Someone had jammed the signal. Across the ballroom, Marco heard shouting. He pushed through the terrified guests. What happened? Enzo looked at him. For the first time in years, the loyal bodyguard looked terrified. Boss, Marco's voice became dangerously quiet. Where is my daughter? Before Enzo could answer, a single gunshot echoed from somewhere outside the mansion. Every conversation stopped. Every guest froze, then another shot. Closer this time, Marco's instincts took over instantly. Everyone stays inside, he turned to Enzo. Find Lily. I'm all ready. No, Marco grabbed him by the jacket. You bring my daughter back. Alive. I swear I will. Marco released him and looked around frantically. Then he noticed Isabella, unlike everyone else. She wasn't panicking. She was studying the muddy footprints leading toward the rear gardens. Thinking, calculating, Marco rushed toward her. "What do you see?" She pointed toward the open balcony. "They didn't go toward the main gate." "How do you know?" "Because whoever took Lily wanted everyone looking outside." She pointed toward the rain. "The footprints are too light," Marco frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," she swallowed hard, "whoever took her is probably still inside this estate." Marco's eyes widened, then from somewhere deep beneath the mansion. A child's terrified scream shattered the silence. "Daddy!" Marco didn't hesitate. He sprinted toward the sound. Isabella followed without a second thought. Neither of them realized they were running straight into a trap that had been planned for months. Marco threw open the heavy basement door with such force that it slammed against the stone wall. "Matteo," he shouted, only his own voice echoed back. Isabella was already moving. "This way!" She didn't wait for permission. She followed the faint sound of another cry through the narrow corridor. "Daddy, it's him!" Marco yelled. He sprinted forward. The corridor opened into an old underground wine cellar. Broken bottles covered the floor. Shelves had been overturned. A single emergency lantern flickered in the darkness, and tied to a wooden chair in the middle of the room. 8-year-old Matteo de Luca struggled desperately against thick ropes. "Daddy," Marco rushed toward him. "Matteo!" "Stop!" Isabella's voice echoed through the cellar. Marco froze. "What?" She pointed toward the floor, almost invisible in the dim light. A thin wire stretched across the path leading to Matteo. "If you'd taken one more step." Marco looked more closely. The wire was connected to several hidden explosives attached beneath the old wine racks. His blood ran cold. "They wanted you to rush in," Isabella whispered. "They expected you to react like a father, not think like a survivor." Marco slowly backed away. At that exact moment, gunfire erupted from the far end of the cellar. Bullets shattered glass bottles. "Down!" Enzo shouted as he and 2 guards burst into the room. The ambush had begun. Marco pulled Matteo's chair behind a stone pillar while Enzo and the guards returned fire. The underground cellar filled with smoke and deafening echoes. One masked attacker tried to rush toward Matteo. Marco met him halfway. Years of violence hadn't left him. One punch sent the man crashing into a barrel. Another attacker raised his weapon. Before he could pull the trigger, Enzo tackled him to the ground. Within seconds, the shooting stopped. Silence returned. Only heavy breathing remained. Marco immediately knelt beside Matteo. I'm here," the boy threw his arms around his father. "I was scared. I know. They said you wouldn't come." Marco closed his eyes. "There is nowhere on earth I wouldn't go for you." As Enzo cut the ropes, Isabella walked toward the explosive wire. "What are you doing?" Marco asked. "Making sure no one else gets hurt." She crouched carefully. Her eyes studied every connection, every trigger, every knot. Enzo frowned. "You know explosives." "No, I know how people think when they build traps." She carefully traced the wire without touching it. "Don't move anyone through this doorway." "It isn't safe." Marco watched her. "You've stayed unusually calm." She smiled faintly. "I've lived through enough emergencies to know panic never saves lives." Enzo suddenly received a radio signal. "They're escaping." Marco stood. "Go." Enzo hesitated. "What about you?" "I'll stay with my son." Enzo nodded before disappearing with the remaining guards. Within minutes, police sirens began surrounding the estate. The attackers fled before they could be captured, but one important thing remained. Matteo was alive. An hour later, police officers questioned everyone in the mansion. Paramedics examined Matteo. Apart from bruises and shock, he was unharmed. Marco stood near one of the windows overlooking the rain. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear anymore, from relief. He heard footsteps behind him. It was Isabella. "You should sit." "I'm fine." "No," she smiled gently. "You're exhausted." Marco looked at her. "You saved my son. You warned me. If you hadn't—" He stopped. His voice refused to cooperate, for perhaps the first time since becoming the feared head of the De Luca family. Marco De Luca looked vulnerable. "I owe you everything. You owe me nothing. I did what anyone should do." Marco slowly shook his head. "No, not everyone runs toward danger." They stood in silence. Finally, Marco asked, "Who are you?" The question lingered in the room. "I've asked myself that many times." "No, I mean," he looked directly into her eyes. "How did you stay so calm?" She took a slow breath. "There was something I never told anyone here. I'm listening. I wasn't always a housekeeper." Marco remained silent. For almost 12 years. I worked as a pediatric emergency nurse in Florence. His eyes widened. I loved every second of it. I believed I would retire wearing that uniform. What changed? Tears filled her eyes. A bus accident. She looked toward the floor. Children, so many children. We worked for hours. We saved most of them. But not all, her voice broke. One little boy, he was about Matteo's age. He looked at me and asked. She struggled to continue. Am I going home today? Marco said nothing. I lied. I told him yes. He died before sunrise. A tear rolled down her cheek. I resigned 3 months later. I couldn't forgive myself, Marco quietly answered. It wasn't your fault. I know that now, but it took years. I chose housekeeping because I wanted a quieter life. I still wanted to help people. Just. Differently, Marco understood now. The calm, the confidence, the instinct, everything finally made sense. The next morning, police investigators returned with security footage recovered from damaged servers. One video changed everything. Bianca appeared on the screen. She was meeting secretly with one of the attackers 2 nights before the gala. The room fell silent. Enzo stared at the monitor. She sold information. Another video appeared. Bianca handing over copies of the estate's security schedules. Another. She accepted a thick envelope filled with cash. Marco's expression hardened. Where is she? One officer answered. She tried leaving before dawn. We arrested her at the front gate. Hours later, Bianca was brought back in handcuffs. She looked directly at Marco. I never meant for the child to be hurt. Marco's voice became ice, but you were willing to risk it. They offered more money than I'd ever seen, and you sold my family. Bianca lowered her head. I made a terrible mistake. Marco looked toward the officers. Take her away. As she disappeared through the front door, the mansion felt lighter. Years of quiet betrayal had finally ended. 3 weeks later, the De Luca estate looked different. Not because the marble floors had changed, or the gardens, the people had. Marco spent every evening having dinner with Matteo. No meetings. No phones, no interruptions. One evening, Matteo smiled. You've been home every night. Marco laughed softly. I'm trying to become the father you deserve. You already are. Across the table, Isabella smiled. Marco looked at her. I've been thinking. That sounds dangerous, she joked. He actually laughed. I'd like you to oversee the De Luca Children's Foundation. She looked surprised. What foundation? The one we're creating. It will provide emergency medical equipment to children's hospitals across Italy, and scholarships for nurses. In your name. She immediately shook. Her head. No, not in my name. Why not? Because this isn't about me. She looked at Matteo. It should be about every child who needs help. Marco smiled. Then we'll build it for them. She nodded. I'd be honored. Months later, the first children's wing funded by the De Luca Foundation opened its doors. On opening day, reporters surrounded Marco. One journalist asked, Mr. De Luca, what inspired this project? Marco didn't hesitate. I spent years believing strength came from power. He glanced toward Isabella, who stood beside Matteo and her daughter Sofia. I was wrong. The strongest person I've ever met didn't carry a weapon. She carried compassion. The greatest lesson of my life came from the woman I underestimated. Isabella smiled. Embarrassed by the attention, Sofia slipped her small hand into her mother's. Matteo stood beside them, laughing with his new friend as though the nightmare had never happened. Sometimes healing didn't erase the past. It simply gave people the courage to build something better from it. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone who still believes kindness is a weakness. Leave a comment below and tell us, do you think Marco judged Isabella too quickly, or did his dangerous life make his caution understandable? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Because in the end, wealth can build mansions, power can command armies, fear can silence enemies. But only compassion has the power to save a life, heal a broken heart, and transform a family forever.